Hey guys, in this one, we're going to talk about terminology and how important it is to know the words and be able to utilize those words to communicate to each other. You got to remember a couple things before we get started, and that is eventually you'll be working in teams of maybe one person, two-person, five people, 100, 1,000, maybe even sometimes 10,000 people. So when you work in teams, you'll need to be able to communicate with them and tell them what to do or what's your problem or situation or whatever it is that's in your concern. You can't tell your team leader to come to your screen every time that you have a problem. You need to be able to tell them in words, explaining yourself what's going on, explaining to him what's going on, and asking what you need to ask properly. Think of it this way. If when you talk to a 4 or 5 year old or a 6 year old or 7 year old or 8 year old, let's say a young age, under 10 years old as an example, when you talk to them, they can't express themselves fully. So all they do is they point to stuff and they say that thingy, that object, that thing that looks like this. This becomes really hard form of communication when you're not 10 years old and you're 30 years old and you still sound like a child. Okay? So what we want to do is to learn the terminology so that when we communicate with someone, we don't sound like a young person, but we sound professional, right? So over this course, we're going to learn a lot of this terminology. I would suggest that you write yourself down a little text of all these terminology and utilize them in our conversations or conversation with each other, right? So for these things, we've learned a couple things so far. Let's go over a few of them. One of them was, so actually while we're at it, I'm going to teach you how to do a comment. We're going to do /*, press enter. Comment is code that does not matter. Does the computer, the Java interpreter does not care for. So it will just ignore whatever's in there. Comments are good for us to leave notes, so for whoever the other programmer is, or for ourselves to come back later and understand what's going on in that part of our code. There are two ways of doing comments. One is called a block comment. And you could see it's a block comment because all of this is comments. Notice if I put the same SDF outside here, I'm going to get a red error message or error. This is because it's not part of our block comment. Our block comment starts with a /* and ends with a */. We could have that on a specific line. And you could see that whenever that is a comment, it becomes grayed out. So this is not a comment, it's white. We could also have a end of line comments, such as here, main area of code, let's say. The end of line comments means anything after the // is all comments. So none of this will be registered. The bigger difference of these block comments is end of line could only be at the end of line, while the block comment, we could put it in there, right? So this could be interesting to kind of tell yourself what this variable is, what this is, etc., etc. Okay, so here's our first, so we're going to learn about terminology. Let's see if I spell correctly. If you don't spell correctly, there's a spell check, right click, show context action, terminology. It's always, my English is not the best. I'm telling you that straightforward, but it's good to use the tools in hand to make your English better. So the first terminology we have is comments, let's say. So comments are, let's say, it's not code, it's stuff that is ignored by compilers, useful for information or notes for future on. You're going to see a lot of comments is important. one of the aspects inside our outline is to be able to create a documentation, and comments are going to be used for that. Right, so that's our first terminology. Maybe I'm putting too much spaces. Yeah, that's a bit too much space. So you'll notice that I use a lot of tabs, and these tabs kind of help me out with seeing stuff. So I know inside terminology there's comments, and this is, maybe I'll put it like this. Make it clean for yourself to read. The same way this code, we're going to be coming back to it many times. We want to make this as clean as possible. That's our first initial goals, but we'll come back to that. Some other stuff that we've learned in the previous videos, we've learned about what is a imperative language, right? Imperative language is really important. It's important to understand that we have such a power. Well, maybe you're going to forget this, and it's perfectly fine. But this is basically saying we're going to use a sequence of statements. You could say commands, but statements is the better word. We're going to come back to what statements is. To use a sequence of statements to reach a goal, a certain goal, right? Whatever the goal for that application is. And these statements are going to change the state of your program as they are executed. There we go. So this is again another, let me just lower this. So this is again another one that's really important for us. So we've added another word. We added statement. Okay. So let's go ahead and state what statement means. So statements is basically an action that the computer is taking, a command. So we could say an action, a command. Examples, we have our system.out.println here. We haven't talked about it yet, but you've noticed that this prints to the screen. So this prints to screen, right? Any statements that we add here is, any action that we add here, you're going to see them. We call them statements. Okay, so this is important. What else do we got? We got a program. I don't know if I want to list everything here. I might just give you a file. I don't know. I would rather you create this on your own. We'll do one last one, a program maybe. Well, this is basically, program is a bunch of statements, one after the next, which are being executed. Inside something that's predictable because we wrote it. We're going to talk about this. And this sequence, again, it's kind of saying what imperative language is, but program is the whole application for you, right? It's going to, this application, whenever it's running, it's going to allow you to reach that end goal because of what you've done. Okay, I'm going to write this more, but you're going to start in creating these yourself. And I would like it that you keep these terminologies and you learn these terminologies, because you'll need to communicate with me and you'll need to communicate with your future employer and so forth, so on. Okay, so this is good enough for now. So as we go forward, make sure to write all of your terminology somewhere and come back to it over time. See you guys in the next video.